What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Terran School. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys some really crazy TVZ builds. Last week I played against Ragnarok, one of the best Korean Zergs in the tournament, and I ended up doing some insane strategies. Like I was freestyling a bit, combining it with some old builds that I used to do, and it worked out super well. And personally, I just thought it was super fun. I thought seeing those builds work against such good players is it's just it's a whole different vibe than seeing the standards build work and all that. So I just wanted to share it with you guys. I'm going to be showing you guys two builds that are pretty similar. They have a really cool follow-up, and that's mostly what it's about too. Obviously, this is a Terran school. I'll be posting the replays in the description as well. So if after watching the video at some point you want to, look at it again in your own time, remind yourself, or look at something specific, you can download them from there. But for this video, I'll be giving like some tips, some extra ideas and all that. So basically what these builds are going to be is I'm going to do some very early aggression with Hellbats, keeping up the pressure, doing some weird follow-ups. And, I'm going to follow up both builds with mech as well. But I feel like it's kind of a crazy mech that I did. Like I was just constantly attacking instead of the sitting back kind of stuff. And yeah, just enjoy, I guess. So we're going to start this build by doing barracks first and then the gas. Obviously, I rarely ever play gas first, but I still want to mention it to you guys. And I'm just going to play Reaper as well, none of the crazy Marine first or Reactor stuff. Now, sometimes I struggle a bit playing against the Korean players because I'm not quite aware of their meta. Like, I don't look at the Korean tournaments and stuff that much. I do watch the global tournaments. But, I know how, like, the superstars play, like the Maru and the Rogues, but Ragnarok sometimes flies a little bit under the radar. So it was hard for me to meta game. So I really just decided to, freestyle a little bit, give it a go. And obviously it went fantastic. Now, what I'm going to do here is, what's very important, this build has a lot of SCV cuts. If there's something you really want to pay attention to, is when I'm going to make SCVs and skip them, I'll be trying to highlight it as well. But besides that, I feel like these builds are actually not that complicated. Obviously, when you do play aggressive against ZERG, you can run into some bad luck at times, so being really good at adapting is important. But if you just like playing aggressive, then yeah, these builds are going to be perfect for you. Now the Reaper, honestly, with this build, there's nothing too important to scout with the Reaper. Normally, I advise you guys to scout it like 4 minutes for the Roach Warren. But if you're already doing an attack of your own, it's kind of hard to respond after 4 minutes. Also, one thing that's important if you do aggressive builds is if you keep the Reaper alive, it seems small, but Reapers actually add a lot to your aggressive potential. Like if you do like a Hellbat, let's say you're doing a regular Hellbat timing, a Reaper could throw a grenade at the Queens to knock them into your Hellbats, for example. So if you do aggressive builds, I actually recommend to keep the Reaper alive. Now back at home, so far this is a completely standard opener, okay? A completely standard opener. The first thing that's really important is going to happen here. So you have the Reaper Marine and you switch over the Factory and the Reactor to make Hellions completely standard. Then what's really important is that you lift this barracks a bit further away and make a tech lab on it instantly. And the reason you want to fly it a bit further away is because you're not just going to make Marines and Stim, you're going to be making Marauders for a very quick timing attack. Now one thing you have to keep in mind of, if you can, is to realize where your opponent's overlords are. Like the most important thing here is denying the scouting, which can be complicated. And one thing we're going to do to help us with that is make a Viking first. So you start the Marauder and the Viking. Now pay attention to the SCV count. I've made 25 and now I'm currently cutting. If you do an SCV or a Hellbat timing attack, you typically need to cut SCVs to really be able to afford all the units. It doesn't mean you're 100% all in, but you're just going to have a few less SCVs to make sure your timing actually hits at a decent timing, right? So you're going to have Marauders with Concussive Shell. Always keep the Marine on the edge here. Overlords usually come either from a pillar in your natural where they can hide or from the side. So just an easy tip is to keep your Marines on the wall here always, on the edge of your base, I mean. And then when the Overlord flies in from the natural, if it happens to be there, you'll see it fast enough with like your depot or your command center and you can react. Now another thing you can do to deny scouting is to actually keep the follow-up Hellions at home. You can send the first two across, usually no problem. But after that, you really want to keep them at home. So we're going to make a Viking here. An important timing is actually, if you do a Hellbat attack, to get the armory before the medevac, unless you play on a really big map. If you play on a big map, you can actually get the medevac first and it'll arrive faster, that's good. But on a small like this, you need the armory first. Now you see how I denied the Overlord, the Viking was in time. Now personally, this is something you're going to have to decide for your own meta. Personally, pro Zergs pretty much always only send one Overlord. Like, the fact that he has a second Overlord here is very rare, so I didn't even think of it. But if in your MMR, you notice that they always send 2 Overlords or 3 or whatever across, make sure you try to hunt for all of them. If they actually only send one Overlord at a time, hunt for one and go across, it's fine. But yeah, if you ever see that they send multiple Overlords, just make sure to go around. Now, what you're going to attack with here is 3 Marauders in the medevac and about 8 Hellbats. And make sure to not lose any units. Like, any unit's really important. Even this Viking, if you can avoid damage on it, looks like it's going to take some in mine here. If you can avoid taking damage on it, do it because you're landed and it's going to help. You know, don't lose the Reaper, stuff like that. And then your medevac is going to be on the way. I load every unit in it. 3 Marauders, 1 Marine. Make sure to drop the Marine though, for like a very important reason that you're about to see. You want to boost in the medevac and drop the Marauder so they slow the Queens. And something that can happen if you don't unload the Marine first is that it drops the Marine out and you don't actually catch a Queen. And this is pretty much how you continue with this attack. You go around using the slow to catch single Queens like that. And that is like the key micro in this. The only other micro you potentially need to do is to split your units against Banelings like that. And in particular, you need to split the Hellbats. Marauders, they don't take damage from Banelings. Obviously, you don't want them to all take the damage while being clumped. But splitting the Hellbats is very important because they're the core of this push. Now, he's actually doing a really good job holding here. I feel like I don't usually see this good of a defense against this build. But still, a lot of Queens are falling. There's only going to be 3 Queens left that are probably going to have to be sent to the front. And there's only units in production and nothing else. Even more Queens are going to go down here. And I would say this was not completely successful, but it was okay. Normally you want to go for a bit more, but this was alright. I think the biggest thing here is actually killing the Queens. Like, there's going to be very little creep, little injects and all that. Now the important part, at home, we actually make a 3rd CC. And the craziest thing about my style, because this Hellbat attack, it has been seen before. It is not the craziest thing ever. It's a really cool Hellbat attack. It's my favorite one. If I do a Hellbat attack, this is usually the one I do. But that's not the craziest thing about this build. After going to 3cc, I drop down 2 gases. And I actually transition into mech. So I'm going to add 2 factories. And I want to make sure that these 2 factories have tech labs to use. So I'm going to use the barracks for my Marauders to give a tech lab to the factory. And I'm going to make a tech lab on the starport to give it to another factory. Now the reason why I kept rallying across is because it's very easy for a Zerg to hold that attack and just make like 500 drones, you know. So what I did by attacking all the time is to make sure he actually had to make a lot of links and spend more money on Queens. Like, if I didn't keep attacking, he legit would have been on 80 drones by now. Like, it actually could have been. And now I'm going to explain to you why I thought this build was so cool. What happens when you kill a lot of Queens, Lings, drones is that Zerg, they will usually keep making basic units. So Zerg will continue making Lings to defend, Queens to defend, and then some drones. And they will not usually tech up. And that's when this is going to come into play. I'm going to follow up my Marauder Hellbat timing attack by making 2 Thors. And 2 medevacs to ferry them across. And why this is so good is because the only thing that really counters this, like strongly, is roaches. But since they defended your attack by playing Lingbane Queen, there's actually no reason for them to go roaches. Besides that, after a Hellbat attack like this, I feel like 90% of the games, everyone will assume that it's bio, because no one really sees a mech follow-up from this. So they will usually not have anything crazy to defend. As you can see here, I'm still pressuring with my units, and it's working, because more and more units are being made on his side instead of drones. There's like, 12 Banelings out already. And so far, even though the attack wasn't successful, it's still working out for me. Because I feel like my plan this game, it just worked out perfectly. And besides that, I'm getting 2 more factories, like it's a typical mech game. I'm getting armor and stuff. And then this is what my follow-up attack is gonna look like. And one thing that I would like to tell you guys is that very often when you see builds, the follow-up is just that important. If you play a 2-on-1, for example, it's not just about the first drop, it's about the follow-up as well. And with this build, I actually think this follow-up was super strong. And it looks like he has a massive army. But the Thor, legit. The Thor is like the only unit that's like really good against Queens. Like, I feel like queens are so good, like, in general against almost everything, but the Thor is one unit that actually just kind of destroys them. 60 damage against the ground. And yeah, it's just insane. So the only micro you want to do here is just split. Like the Thors, it will take care of everything. You just want to make sure that you split your Hellbats to not take damage too much from the Banelings. And the only tip I can give you guys for now, besides being fast, is to have them already pre-split a little bit. So you don't suddenly have to panic split 20 Hellbats, but you already have them split a little bit. And you can see this timing. I'm sure a lot of you didn't believe even when you were watching this video just now, because there were so many units. But this army composition is such a crazy thing to have early on that it actually just worked. Now that you guys saw this game, I want to show you guys the second version I did, which was really awesome as well. Alright, so in this game, I just skipped the first 3 minutes because the opening was literally the same. Reaper, Marine and all that. Once again, check out the replays if you really want to see it again. This game is almost the same. I'm going to do a Hellbat timing attack once again. But this game I'm actually going to open with the famous Penguin Brothers. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this build. I've done a guide on it a long time ago. But basically, instead of getting the tech lab on the barracks, you're going to get a reactor. And instead of the Marauders, you're basically going to make Vikings. And this is a build that I feel like it's so crazy and no one has ever really used these besides me. Is that it's always super unexpected. I feel like this is a build you can always pull out and there's always a decent chance of it working. Simply because it's so weird and crazy. So what you're going to do, instead of making Marauders and concussor shells from the tech labs, you're going to land the starport on the reactor. And you're just going to start out pumping 2 Vikings at a time and 2 Hellions at a time. Now once again, just like last game, notice the SCV cut at 25. Very important. As you can see, I would not be able to afford these had I actually started 2 SCVs at the start. Or maybe I wouldn't have been able to afford the depot. Now this game, okay, I'm going to teach you guys a quick mind game as well, right? Normally, the overlord timing is not quite that perfect, so you can get away with doing this build free. If they actually scout it like this, you want to add like a little bit of a fake mind game. So what I did was, instead of showing that I'm making more than 6 Hellions, that's usually a sign of like something crazy if you make more than 6 Hellions, I lifted the barracks off and I started stim. So even though he scouted this, it wasn't suspicious. And then after the Overlord died, I would fly it back for more Hellions and cancel stim. This is just a quick mind game you can do to make the Zerg think that you're like actually playing like a normal bio game, or at least going for a 3rd CC and stuff. If they don't Overlord scout, you would just very peacefully continue making, you know, Hellions and Vikings. Then with your 2 Vikings, you can actually search for Overlords all over the map. And then after you start your 3rd and 4th Viking, you want to add this armory. And basically, just a very basic explanation on why this is so good is because this build, Vikings are actually, they're pretty bad stat-wise. When Vikings are landed, honestly, they are pretty bad stat-wise. Like, you wouldn't put Vikings up against Zerglings and be like, yeah, damn, these trade well, you know? But the thing is, with this build, you actually get like the maximum amount of fighting units you can actually get with a Hellbat all-in. Because you can make Vikings from a reactor. And, you know, they're pretty tough. Like, they have like, what is 125 health or something, 135 after the buff. They do some damage. It's basically like having a few super marines. So this attack is going to be 8 Hellbats, 4 Vikings. I think if you don't have to do the mind game by flying the factory away, you can even have 10. And I know this is crazy, but trust me, this build has actually worked a lot for me. And then you can just go in for like this. Like, this is just a normal Hellbat attack, but you just have like 4 super marines in the form of these Vikings with them. As you can see, splits against the Banelings super important. If you don't split, you can get absolutely torn apart by the Banelings. But now you can see, I swear guys, this is actually legit maybe my favorite build in StarCraft. Like, it's not the best, but it's just awesome. Now here, I'm actually going to make a mistake that I'm going to advise you guys not to do. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to dive into the natural because I really thought that I had the game won. What you should do in this case, if you overwhelm them so hard, is usually just kill the 3rd base and you're in a winning position. The only difference is if you... Let's say there's a map when you attack here. Like, it's very possible, like on the last map, for example, Curious Minds. You don't attack in the 3rd, you attack in between the natural and the 3rd. Then you can actually dive into the natural, but here... I basically attacked the 3rd and walked all the way past to dive into the natural, gave him time to get Banelings up and stuff. So in a scenario like this, just kill the 3rd and take your win, and then see if you can do something more. So here, I actually made a big mistake by going in here. As you can see, this position is very awkward for me. This is typical how to not micro this. My Hellbats are fighting the queens, and my Vikings are fighting the Lynx, and it should be the other way around. So this is like a nice lesson on how not to do it, I suppose. Still gonna win this game, by the way, spoilers. Meaning the build is insane. But one thing that's really nice about Vikings, when you do get owned, you can actually fly them away. You can pick them up, fly them away. I think I'm gonna save those at some point. Like, I'm really pressuring super hard in these games. Also, if you can, in a situation like this, try to focus the drones. Like here, it is pretty clear that the attack is lost, you know? I have only 2 Hellbats left, one of them is red HP. I have some bruised Vikings. One wave of reinforcement links is gonna clean me up. So then what you do is you really try to get like as many drones as possible. Vikings ideally always on the queens, because that's just where they have the most value. And here you can see that I actually saved these Vikings. One thing you can also do, by the way, is if you push them back, but their overlords are exposed, like here, I could have lifted all my Vikings and killed all of the overlords as well. Kind of a fun thing you can do. And in general, I think this build is just so awesome because it's very versatile. Like, you can do a lot of crazy stuff with it that you usually can't. And at the same time, at home, I'm going to do the exact same follow-up as last game. Like, just after such a crazy attack, it just seems like it's such a nice and clean follow-up to do. So I'm going to get the 3rd CC, followed by the 2 more gases. Hope, okay, I was just afraid. It's like I'm casting my own game. I was afraid I was going to let those links in. So I'm going to get the 2 gases and the 2 factories here for the same exact follow-up. Now, I really wanted to go for a second attack. Just like the last game, I've really been rallying across and going for that attack, you know. And it's working again, you can see. Ragnarok is making like a ton of units, not actually getting a lot of drones out. This game looks way better for me than the last game as well, because there's just, you know, we're almost even in workers, which is not where ZERG wants to be. Usually a ZERG wants to be, you know, 15 workers up or so, kind of like the last game. And now I'm gonna go again. Like, I kept making Vikings. That's one thing I would tell you guys to be careful on. I have messed this up by continuing to make Vikings, because like I said, Vikings are just not the best stat-wise. So if you're really going to spam them, there is going to be a time when you just get like obliterated. And I think that's actually going to happen here. Because yeah, Vikings don't cut it for the long run. They're mostly for the first timing attack. But I really wanted to keep pressure on, so I did. And I actually thought it was working for a second, but he just had, you know, he's been making units all the time, and he just had a little bit more than I was expecting. Actually, I do remember my mindset in this moment, and what I thought was, because I didn't show that many units, he would actually be making drones. But he was doing the right thing by just making more and more units all the time. So you see, we're gonna have to use the evacuate button, save 4 of our Vikings, and come back later. But even this, it wasn't so bad. Just for the reason that the ZERG had to make drones all the time, as you can see. Lair only just now started, like no roach warren in the way. And in the same time, stores are already on the way. Like the follow-up here hit so fast that it's actually, that's what makes it so difficult, right? The pressure into the fast follow-up. Now, one thing I want to correct on my own build is that I got my gases too late. I noticed that I took my gases after the factories. Though those gases should definitely be before. The gas timing in the first game was definitely a bit better than this. And yeah, the follow-up timing attack that I'm going to do is basically the same as in the first game. The main difference is that I have Vikings instead of Marauders. But they kind of serve the same purpose in the second push. In the first push is different because the Vikings are just pure firepower. And the Marauders are there to like kill one queen with the slow all the time. But for the follow-up push, the Vikings and the Marauders are basically the same. They're just there because they're good against Banelings. And you can, you know, basically A-move them while splitting Hellbats around them. And yeah, my follow-up is also going to be the same. Besides that, you know, I'm going to add 2 more factories at some point, make tanks. Obviously, you cannot be making Thors forever, guys. Thors are kind of the same like Vikings in that way. Stat-wise, they're just not that great. This is mostly just like a timing thing. So here you can see, it's pretty much the same thing as in game 1. And that's what I thought was so beautiful about this series as well. I freestyled. I kind of on accident found like this inhuman synced up timing push that I beat him twice with. And yeah, I was honestly a little bit in love with myself over these 2 series. I would advise to be careful when going up against roaches. Roaches do really well against these. And here, this victory is pretty much just because everything hit so fast, the pressure was on. But typically, if there's too many roaches, you should probably run away, because they do really well against Thor Hellbat. Here it's a bit different, because there's no roach speed yet. As you can see, these are slow roaches. They're kind of like trickling out one by one. And the time when Thors actually do good is when there are Hellbats to tank for them. So you can see, my Hellbats are actually doing a lot of damage because the roaches are running in. And then at the same time, I can just micro my Thors with the Medivacs. Now, obviously, I'm not expecting you guys to micro it as well as this. But I think you guys can do some juggling, right? Like, I don't think it's too crazy to say that you guys are capable of doing some Thor juggling. Just like I said, by the way, at the same time, follow up is mech. But this style, if you play like this, I feel like you're the kind of person that really likes to play it crazy, you know, do like some drops with mech, just do all of the crazy stuff. And that's what I was planning to do as well. I was not planning this game to play like a safe, solid mech game behind this. I really just wanted to rally my stuff across and do something crazy. How many kills are on this Thor, actually? I would really like to see that. Let's see. 15 kills. It's not that bad. I guess it's mostly roaches and queens, though. It actually makes it a lot. Yeah, this is honestly the funkiest push I've seen in a while. There's like tanks rallying in, tank on the low ground as well. While I was playing this, I was really in a balance between like, am I throwing this game or am I doing the greatest thing ever, you know? But no matter what, I thought these builds were really awesome. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Give it a try. Let me know how it goes, guys, honestly. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. Oh no, my Thor died at the end. Thank you guys very much for watching. And yeah, don't forget to leave a sub and like. And I'll see you guys next time. Adios.